Coming to you live from the Business Radio X studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Hello and welcome to another session, another episode of Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and I am excited to have our guest today, and you should be too. He is with Property Management, Inc., PMI. He's the COO of this brand. His name is Jeremiah Cundiff. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Rob, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You got it. Hey, listen, as I tell everybody, I usually say this in the beginning of our shows, it's a pleasure to speak to guys like you, right? And look at the success that you're having and talk through it and really help break it down for our audience. So before we get into the details, the nuts and bolts, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you wound up at PMI?
Absolutely. So I've been in the franchise industry for approximately 14 years and started in the industry with a startup franchise out of Phoenix, Arizona, and ended up being involved in an exit, selling that brand when it was in its early stages of development, and was kind of out of a job in terms of looking for a new opportunity. And I found PMI back in 2009, 2010. I was at the very end of 2009, beginning of 2010. And at the time, the brand Property Management Inc. had 17 franchise units, in the system. And I can't even really consider it a brand back then, Rob, because with 17 franchise locations, we were just getting started. But Steve Hart, the co-founder, and at the time he was co-founder and president, now co-founder and CEO, he was looking for someone to come into the brand and help them recruit, new franchise owners to buy into the vision of building a national property management brand through the franchise business model. So I started in the brand, recruiting some of our earlier pioneers that bought into the franchise system, and then just progressed through some different roles in the organization, took on a role in recruiting conversions into the brand, and then transitioned over to operations about 6 years ago. And then about a month ago, got promoted to chief operating officer. And so it's been an incredible journey, watching this brand go from 17 franchise locations to, we just announced that we hit 400 franchise locations, and it just went out this last week. So it's been an incredible journey.
I was going to say that you went from 17 units. And yes, I know I work with a lot of emerging brands, and it's a pleasure to go through that process. But it is those first 100 are pretty tough to get. So that's pretty amazing. And now, 219, is that accurate? The 2022 Entrepreneur 500, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So you're big league, and I love I like that. I like what they do over at Entrepreneurs. So it's very helpful. But it's very, I find that those brands that make that list, they're good brands. There's a reason for it. So it's nice to be ranked right there in the middle of the pack. I expect you to move up. We'll have you back on. But no, it's amazing. So tell me a little more so we talk about growth, right? So here, I mentioned to you before the show about from 2020 till now, and then I looked a little before then at your growth because you shared on your website. And it seems like you're getting a boost the last 2 or 3 years, hitting the 400. You're COO. You even got a VP of marketing now, which is pretty amazing, right? So tell me a little more. Is there something specific that you could put your finger on that's impacted the last 2 or 3 years?
When you look at the model that we've built, Rob, I attribute our growth to, prospective franchise buyers looking at PMI and saying, this is a different type of franchise opportunity. And I say that because when you look at PMI, I kind of refer to it as a platform, brand. And it's a platform brand because we basically have 5 businesses within the Property Management Inc., system, if you will, that a franchisee can participate in. We refer to this as the 4 pillars of property management plus realty. And no one's doing what we're doing in the real estate or property management industry by the way we've built our model. And so if franchise owners are looking at PMI and they're evaluating the opportunity, first it's a low cost opportunity, but then they're looking at it saying, okay, I can enter the market with PMI doing residential property management. And we require the franchisee to have a single pillar focus when they come into the brand and they launch their business. But then as they develop and grow their business, they can say, hey, I want to invest further and I want to add short-term rental management, or I want to add association management, or I want to add commercial management, and then take advantage of the realty or real estate sales opportunities within my portfolio. So as we've told that story to the market, it's just attracting individuals that want to be real estate entrepreneurs. And I think one of the things that has really helped us, drive our growth is our focus as a management team. And we call it our core focus, and it's really defined as creating successful entrepreneurs. And so that's what we focus all of our time, resources, and energy on doing, is helping these franchise owners come into a single pillar within the brand and become a successful operator of a real estate management company.
Well, you said so much in that, right? Like, it's amazing. So like, one thing you did say was the focus part, because I'm trying to, when I talk to guys like you, I'm thinking what you're doing is not easy. I mean, you're bringing on, I think this year, 40 units, something like that. Is that right?
As far as new franchisees?
Owners.
We'll be closer to 90.
90. So like, in order to achieve that, of course, onboarding is one thing, but you said something that got me, which was the single pillar focus.
Yes.
You have a vision for growing the business, but you got them focused in one place, because it's a lot, right? I can imagine, for any franchise brand, any franchisee, right? But you get them focused so they have that early success, and then they grow in to ongoing success. But I think that's brilliant, because if you say, well, we do all these amazing things, which is great, a lot of times it's difficult, right, for someone to focus and build momentum. And then when it's a natural fit to expand, you do it at the right time. But that's what I picked up from that, because you don't just get to 400, right, if people aren't making money. And you made another point, and I think this is a saying or a quote from someone famous about, if you want to make money, you help other people make money, right? And, your brand is doing that, or else you wouldn't be where you are. So that's pretty amazing. Is there, when you look at, you said something about the earlier guys that you've worked with, you were there in the beginning. So you got the early franchisees, and now you have the ones that you're seeing now. Is there a DNA? Is there something about, I know that you bring a lot to the table, obviously, but there's got to be something about the kinds of people that really do well in your network. Is there something you could describe that would kind of frame a successful franchisee for you guys?
I'll tell you, this is something that we discuss often, is how do we continually refine or define, what the ideal candidate is for the franchise, and specifically, of course, PMI. There's some attributes that we're looking for. Usually when someone comes into this business, because it's not a brick and mortar business where you're, basically building a physical location from the ground up, we have to have hunters, that are coming into the brand, that have kind of that finder mindset, that want to go out and, kind of push into the market, their territory, when they launch their franchise. And one of the things that we really work on with our franchisees as they come into the system is we've learned that, most new franchisees are first-time business owners. And so they're developing the skill set, what I call entrepreneurability or entrepreneurial skill set, a lot of times for the first time, as a new business owner. So, being open to learn, having a growth mindset is key, for our business model, because, a new franchisee is coming in, they have to go out to get their first client, the first month after they finish our workshop, and then they have to build from there. And it is a build. It's a 12 to 18 month, let's go out there and market and do business development activities, referral and networking activities, develop my sales skills. So we found that franchisees that have a growth mindset, that are open to developing new sales skills, are going to thrive, in the system.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, franchising has been in my life for a long time, as yours, and I love the idea. I came into it with being a person that was from the corporate world in technology, sales. It was pretty crazy in the late 90s, early 2000s. Fun, but crazy. And I'm thinking, there's got to be a way I can have more control over my destiny, right? There's a lot of change happening. I think change is now perpetual. But I got into franchising thinking, wow, this is amazing, right? Like, these guys are giving me a blueprint, right? All these different brands. I'm like a lot of folks. When I got into the business, I thought of like McDonald's and fast food and different things like that. And I realized how many different kinds of models there are. And this one being one of the amazing ones for just about anybody to be involved in. So let me ask you this. You obviously just hit 400. You want to continue to grow. Is there something that you guys see just in terms of what we're seeing in the economic climate, right? A lot of uncertainty, a lot of change. Is there something that you're preparing your brand for, or that you would say, this is what leaders should be preparing for as a franchise brand in the coming years? Is there something that you guys think that is prudent to be thinking about?
Absolutely. And our industry is really interesting because when you look at the economic climate and, with interest rates increasing, how does that impact, in our business model? And what we have found is that, when you move into a recession, you have individuals who are saying, hey, you know what? I don't like being at risk of potentially losing my employment. I think it goes to the comment you made earlier. I want to control my destiny. And so being available as a vehicle for people to transition out of corporate America, into business ownership to grow the brand is something that I think we're focused on, absolutely focused on as an executive team, and every brand should be focused on going into potentially a market downturn. In regards to our specific business model, though, our model tends to thrive in downturns. Individuals tend to hold off on purchasing a home because interest rates have gone up, so they might be priced out. So, I'm going to rent, and if you see homes being foreclosed on or any type of correction in the market, you have investors going in and buying those investment properties. So that creates additional management inventory, for our model. So I look at our approach, and we've really tried to provide a diversified model for the franchise owner, so they're insulated too, as an operator. So as they, grow their business, they can, have that peace of mind, that confidence to continue to invest in growth. And I'll give you a prime example of this. If you look backwards at the pandemic, there was one segment of our business that was impacted during the pandemic. We have a pretty nice sized short-term rental portfolio that's driven off of, vacation and business travel and, people booking these short-term rentals. And we saw that book of business, just in terms of our bookings, drop 80%, on the front end of the pandemic. And we have operators that were focused specifically on managing short-term rental properties. But what's interesting is we didn't have one franchise close their business during the pandemic, because what we did is we said, hey, let's help you shift and add the long-term residential rental pillar to your business. Let's help you shift and add the association management pillar to your business, so they could go invest in confidence back into the market, get clients, focus on building and growing revenue until that pandemic, kind of went through its course. And then, we're able to see the recovery of the short-term rental industry. So I think thinking in terms of how do you help your franchisee be insulated from the impacts of economic downturns is going to tremendously help a brand in terms of the long-term picture for growth.
Wow. Yeah. No, I heard a lot of things in that. So for me, when you look at a lot of business models and you think about recession resistance, right? And I thought of you guys and having some experience with brands like yours, knowing that, you probably would be put in that category of being recession resistant. But what are those qualities, though? It's, you said multiple channels or multiple business streams, right? Or revenue streams. That's sort of one thing. Is there something else about your model that makes it uniquely recession resistant?
Yeah, one of the things that's really unique about it, a big portion of our portfolio is residential housing, and it's an absolute need. Individuals need shelter, and that's never going to change, in terms of, the economic or business cycles that we go through. And so, as we effectively deliver services, to real estate investors that provide, rental housing or communities that, want to provide a great ownership experience within a homeowners association or condominium association. That uniquely positions our brand to be that recession resistant model. And it's interesting because I look back and I can almost use the term that we were pandemic resistant, because our brand grew significantly during the pandemic, and we did 6 virtual workshops, and they were packed with 20 people each throughout the pandemic years, and we were literally launching new businesses, and didn't really have a whole lot of an impact other than that period of time where we saw that change in the short-term rental booking side of the business. But I think that's what really insulates us, is we're just tied to the housing industry in a very unique way.
Yeah, sometimes size matters. I was reading on your site. I'm looking at it now. I think 10.5 trillion residential, 32 trillion commercial. Association, there's 400,000 of them. It's just a huge, real estate is a huge market, and you guys really come at it from every angle. So it doesn't really matter what the market's doing. You just have to be able to look at it through a certain lens, right? Yeah,
you look at it through a certain lens, and you're prepared to adjust and help coach your franchisees on being agile, as a business owner. And so, that's one of the things that we talk about, as a team is, how do we properly coach a franchisee on when to add an additional vertical or pillar, to their business, to make that additional investment, to diversify their portfolio. Because we refer to that as being a strategic and diversified property manager, when someone is operating a property management company in multiple pillars. And so we love the model, and the market's responding to it in a really positive way.
Yeah. How important do you believe it is? Because I'm just reading into it, and I know we can't talk specifics about earnings and things, but don't you think, you guys are offering in a marketplace like real estate, many different angles, many revenue streams. But in the end, a business owner having the ability to decide, how big do I want to be? The fact that it can be scalable. How important is that for a franchise brand to have a model that has that potential in the first place, right? What would you say to that? Because it seems to me like these guys can build a pretty big business with these pillars.
They can. And I'll tell you, it's unique because 2 things can occur in terms of the opportunity for a franchisee within our model. You can have a franchisee that decides their franchise journey is to grow their business to a point where they're making good income and they don't have any staff, and they kind of level out in terms of their growth. Now, our challenge is to get those franchise owners to expand their vision and help them recognize how significant the growth opportunity is to transition from, owning a job or a labor grade franchise to a investment grade or owning a business, within the business model. And so we've defined actually our franchise journey to help the franchisee see the different stages of development that they can go through to move into that level of operation that we refer to as a strategic property manager, where they have a high performing team that they've hired and put in place to deliver the end services to the customer base. They've got the marketing engine pumping out, using 6 to 8 lead gen strategies. They got, all their business systems fully integrated using our model and our vendors, and then they've added pillars. And so as we see the franchisees mature, through that process, you're seeing other franchise owners catch that vision and say, you know what, I want to be that kind of operator, in the PMI system. And in fact, when we go to our annual convention, Rob, we recognize our diamond pin recipients, who are those businesses that are generating $1 million in top line revenue as a PMI franchisee. And we make a big deal about those pin recipients. So people say, you know what, I want to earn my diamond pin. And they catch that vision of growing that type of business.
That's amazing. Yeah. There's something about 7 figures, right?
Yeah, there is.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and starting with the end in mind. That's the first thing I thought of. If again, why do you guys have 400 units? How did you do that, right? And you're growing like crazy. But these are some of the reasons, right? You give someone a vision. They start with the end in mind. They know what their vision is. You have an exit plan. You're building an asset. You can put as much into it or less into it, but you have a plan, you have a vision. And I think that's amazing. I mean, are you agreeing with me? I mean, that's probably came with a lot of thought. I mean, you guys just didn't, I mean, it'd be great if you thought of it 17 years ago or 10 years ago. But I mean, really that sort of thinking, I think, is so important, right? And making a big deal about it, right? So that the franchisees all see and what's possible, right? Because there's something about that, whether it's sports or any other record that might get broken, you all of a sudden believe, I can do it. I can do it. If he can do 7 figures, I know, I met him, I know him. And so I think that's amazing work that you're doing. So as we come to the end of the show, one of the things I love to ask guys like you is, in all your time of managing folks, leading teams, working with franchisees, watching them grow into big businesses or bigger small businesses, is there a magic bullet, something that you always, and I said, start with the end in mind. That's a good one.
Yes,
That could be a magic bullet. But is there something that you often think of a lot when you're involved in business that you want to leave with the audience?
Absolutely, Rob. And as I've thought about business, it really comes down to this: that people build businesses, right? And so when I look at the people component of a business, one of the things I've learned as an executive, there's kind of 3 things that I've kind of used as my philosophy to get my teams to really execute on the vision. One, I give them autonomy. No one likes to be micromanaged. And so you have to give them autonomy, but then coupled with that autonomy, you have to create a culture of accountability. And then the third element that I found that really gets, I guess, the troops moving in the right direction, rolling in the right direction, is there has to be a level of emotional buy-in to the vision. And so I find that if I can get a team member to basically accomplish those 3 things, I can help them feel like they have that sense to innovate and to look at the business and figure out how to improve it and have the autonomy to go out and execute it. And they're not micromanaged. And then we have some specific benchmarks and initiatives we're trying to hit, and, tackle as a team, and they know they're accountable to accomplishing that. And they have a buy-in emotionally to what we're trying to do as a brand. That's been somewhat my secret sauce, from an executive role to really help move the needle and move the organization forward. So hopefully that helps somebody that's listening to this show, and they say, those are some good takeaways. And so there's a lot that can go into that, but hopefully that's a benefit to the audience.
No, I tell you, it helped me. It's a refresher, it's a reminder, it's a different way of looking at it or saying it. But I think even for small franchisors, right? Starting with that idea of helping folks buy in, right, to the vision, feel like they're a part of that vision, right? Being clear on what that is, and then let them have some room to do it.
Yeah.
But don't you think that the sooner the better, right? In a franchise culture.
Yeah. You want to, and I'm glad you mentioned culture. And, culture is an interesting animal, in regards to how you create it and how you lead it. But I love how you spoke about the vision and helping, the franchisor team, if we can align, and this is one thing we've worked really hard on, is aligning that team to that vision. The culture kind of comes out naturally, in that process, and we go out and execute. So.
Well, I tell you, it's been a pleasure. Before we let you go today, Jeremiah, is there a website or a resource that you'd want to point the audience to?
Yeah, if I can share 2 websites. So our consumer-facing website is propertymanagementinc.com. That's the website we market to our customers on behalf of our franchisees. And but the franchise opportunity website is propertymanagementinc.franchise.com. So to explore the opportunity, you go to propertymanagementinc.franchise.com. Got it.
That sounds great. I want to thank my sponsor, Integrated Digital Technologies or Strategies, IDS. Thank you so much. I want to thank the audience today. And again, we look forward to our next episode, and bye for now.